Welcome back to Definitely Not Definitive. I'm Ken.
And I'm Bethany.
And we're just a couple of heretics in love that, you know what? No. She's the heretic. Get her! Inquisitor! She's right here! She's right here! She can't run away because she's busting up her knee. Now's the time to get her.
It's true. And I can't hide it. I'm totally a heretic.
But anyways, we love Warhammer 40k, and we've been checking out some Brickies, and this is the final part of his series. We've been breaking them up into 2 videos each, so each of his 2 videos, we have 2 videos for, so this is 4 parts. So this is the final one. So we're getting into, I think the Tyranids are up next for this, and excited for that. And I'm really excited for the Orks. We didn't get Orks in the last video. We got Chaos, which was cool, but we're gonna get into the Orks, and I don't know, they're silly, and they're some of my favorite. From what I really only know most about them from the comments from people.
It's true.
So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Tau. I really want to explore that.
Heretic.
I am.
Now, bugs.
Hey, follow me. The bugs.
The Tyranids. Now, you want to try something a little more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning. That's why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y. Those Marines, huh? That look a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe. I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't you? These are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful. And
it makes me think of like Men in Black and like how they probably
the
are 40k fans. The writers of that.
All 40k because all they want to do
and Starship Troopers.
They want to nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this
that is an awesome picture.
Kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormagons, Termagons, and Genestealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio-Titans. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry.
I like how he just glosses over the Bio-Titan.
Or like them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets. And they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points. Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying. Because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. I mean, as cool as there are some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One-Eye, you can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple, bugs. You want something a little more complex? Talk Genestealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Genestealer cults are a special brand of tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them,
Whoa.
they can
Yeah.
rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their tyrannid hive mind gods. And these brood lords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into Genestealers. And these are called Genestealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants of the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit.
Oh my
They also have this
god.
cool like Mad Max look. It's really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineered monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyrannids. They're cool. But are they as cool as the Orks?
Yeah!
My swings got red. That means I'm super fast.
Orks. Love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40k. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy, because he's the biggest orc. He big orc knows best. You win to the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs. And then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs. They scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, and some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on, and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not. But it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them
the power of
go
imagination.
faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Orks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard. And it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together. That makes
God,
no
it's so
sense.
funny
Their
now.
vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they
That's
think
great.
it works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. And that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip. Which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice.
Gotta have the hot hand.
It's a dice game. But if you're going to have fun, and you want to be stupid, and you want to be silly, you're going to play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons. The Necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators. They still look that way, but then they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, and Necron tier. So Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and to stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really, they were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron in different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war, because during this war in heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan.
It's cool art.
The Catan.
Wow.
These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones? You, the Catan. And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then, with their newfounded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the old ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these old ones. The old ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orks, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the old ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orks actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them. Because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Orks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus, a Mechanicus guy, diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back, and they see all these primitive races on their lawns, and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, on a tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with.
That's cool.
Pretty cool. The Necrons are one of three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War game. Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs I was remade. Here my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trace and the Infinite especially. Little dickhead. But speaking of dickheads, last race. Let's talk the Tau. The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race blue people smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, nah, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim-dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim-dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate. And a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well. They lack that super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos and the Orks do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at range combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have 1,000,000 rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time because they're the Tau. And the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both for style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer,
well said, Bricky.
Now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting, every character has a story, and there's 1,000,000 stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these 2 videos, and anything you can take away, is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative to you. If you'd like to see more of me, Bricky, I do have twitch.tv/Bricky for my streams. You have my merchandise site, in which I was wearing all my merch, but underneath this, because I had to wear this so it wasn't black or white for the green screen, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. If you'd like to see merch, it is in the description. Also, if you'd like to support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Bricky for more videos like this, then that would also be wonderful. So Twitch, merch, Patreon, anything if you want to support, that would be fantastic. I appreciate it. If not, I'm just stoked you got all the way to the end of the video, and that is enough for me. So, we're going to have some more content like this out in the future. Thank you so much for sticking around this long and being with me through this pretty rough time. That's, I think, all I got. Also, before I go to leave you my favorite Warhammer quote, "He who scoffs at the power of the lad's gun has never ran through a field of 1,000 of them." Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bricky.
Yeah, that was really great. I mean, I loved his ending. I thought it was really well done, and you can see his enthusiasm for it, and you can also just see that, like, he's just got such a good attitude, you know, that I like about Bricky. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's just very much comfortable with who he is and just comes through in there. I loved at the end when he just was talking about, like, you know, just play what you want to play as, and have fun doing it, and that's what it's about, you know? And, like, it was curious about the Tau, because it did seem like when he was talking about him, he wasn't as jazzed about him, he wasn't as pumped up about him, as, like, when we saw Luton's stuff on the Tau. Luton seemed to have a little bit, like, kind of like, I want to say almost like a little bit more, like, respect for the Tau or something like that. Like, he seemed a little bit more enamored with the Tau, whereas Bricky wasn't. That's why I thought it was really cool that he said that at the end, because I think Bricky doesn't like the playing against the Tau or with the Tau. You can tell it's like, that's not his favorite faction. But, you know, I think it's cool that he recognized that, hey, you know, some people are going to be different, and it's okay if that is your favorite faction. So, I don't know, just really well done.
It was really interesting to hear the two differing presentations of the Tau, because the first one we watched got me really excited for the Tau.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bricky's, as I'm watching, I'm like, yeah. They could be kind of self-righteous dicks. Yes, it sounds all noble and good intentioned, but really underneath that could be this sort of like self-righteous, egotistical agenda that is now no longer really about the greater good. Now it's really about the good of the Tau, and like...
Exactly. I mean, what is the greater good? I mean, the Tau can not be compared to, like, the sisters, you know, of battle, you know, because they're self-righteous and preachy too, but and they're all for the greater good. They, you know, they're all about doing it for the greater good, and what they believe in is right. And so we just are more familiar with them and, like, that kind of religious kind of you know, fanaticism from history and everything.
Yep.
But, like, you know, the Tau, instead of being fictional, is something easier to say, like, oh, greater good. Oh, well, they're in for the greater good. Like, what we think the greater good would be.
Well, and it was bizarre that it came to mind as we were watching Warhammer 40k, but what Bricky's presentation of the Tau made me think of was The Handmaid's Tale. And, like, the religious fanaticism that takes hold of the universe that is The Handmaid's Tale is done for the greater good. It's, we are not having children, we're not procreating, therefore this alternate way of living, this alternate approach, this alternate religion that worships in this way is what will help us create, sustain, and procreate. And so in the way that he presented the Tau, there was that part of me that's just like, I get what I liked about them initially, but I'm also kind of seeing the other edge of the sword, and how, like, that good intention, that idea can be so corrupted and so twisted to actually promote evil rather than actual good.
So I think out of all the Xenos, I think his presentation of the Necrons was the best. I really thought that story was very fascinating, how it all came to be, and, like, you know, the slaves then, you know, like, revolted, and then, you know, flip the script.
Of course, if, like, you've been on hard times, you're gonna be like, oh, I've learned something and I've grown, and I'm not gonna be the evil that I hate in the world, and blah, blah, blah. And that's all true. And yes, that's what you should think. At the same time, if somebody has hurt you, hurt the ones that you've loved, been been that sort of like slave master and
Sucked your
evil,
soul out.
done that, there's that part of you. I'm not saying it's the good part or like the bigger person part or the part you should be proud of, but there's that part of you that is very okay with seeing that done to them, just so that they get a taste of what they put you through.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying this is the good side. I'm not saying this is the side to be proud
Embrace
of.
the darkness. Embrace the grim dark. Embrace 40k. It's all right. It's all good.
Like,
That's the
we
great
all
thing about
have
40.
it.
You don't have to apologize for being, cruel and,
That's true.
and
You
wanting
can, like,
revenge.
Unleash
and
your darkness in the world of Warhammer.
That's where it's unleashed. Based off of everything that we've seen. Which, by the way, check out our 40k playlist down below in the description of this video to see all of our 40k reactions. Which one are you most excited for? Which one, like, if we were to start playing the tabletop, which faction, who would you start with?
After the first one, I think I was most excited for the Tau, because I'm like, they seem the least sadistic. So they felt, I guess, most in line with me as like your regular person, which is boring, and I get why nobody would want to play like that, because you want to play all your fantasies in the fantasy game. I can't go for the Inquisitors because I'm a heretic. And so while I think the Inquisitors are super cool and seem like amazingly badass.
Yeah.
I'm a heretic, and that just feels very counterintuitive, and I don't feel like I can cheer for them because that would be wrong.
Yeah.
I can, or at least I am, however, really interested in the assassins.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm super intrigued by them. And what I love about what Bricky said is that every character in this world has a story. It's not just every group has a story, which they do, but also each individual character within that group has a story, has a history. And that's what I love about this. If you can create a world with that much detail where everyone has a unique story to them, that to me is a level of creativity that's amazing. It's a level of immersing yourself in something that is a lot of work and to be applauded. So the assassins to me had the most interesting story out of everyone. And I want to explore that. How about you?
I think I'd have two for the different types of styles.
Orcs, of course.
Two different styles I'd want to play. So I think that the Orcs would be one of them. That's if, like, it depends on what I'm playing. Like, if we're throwing back a few, drinking a little bit while we're playing, just having fun.
For your guys' night?
Yeah, for like a guys' night or something like that. And we're just, then I'm playing as the Orcs, because then it doesn't really matter. I'm just throwing in, the strategy. But like, I think if I really wanted to like get into it and get into the strategy of it all, based on the models that I saw, and then based on also Bricky's video now, it was a faction I didn't care for, was the Adeptus Sororitas, the nuns with guns. I'd want my battle tank organ going, and like the angels that they had that I thought looked really cool,
and the cherubs, like the dark twisted cherubs.
Yeah,
so freaky.
Who doesn't want a dark twisted cherub on their side? And then plus, like while I'm playing, I'd be blasting like church rock hymn music going out of my spaceship, and so I think that would be fun. But I don't know. So those are things that I thought about. This isn't the end of our 40k journey.
No.
So we're gonna do more. There's a bunch of videos that we have requested. Drop some more down below in the comments. Let us know where next we should go with this. And we do want to get to the fantasy side of Warhammer. We do want to get to that as well. It's just, we've been kind of consumed with 40k and World of Warcraft and a bunch of other stuff that
you need to cover the basics first. Like, we need to know and understand who we're talking about.
But there are two different worlds. There's like the 40k Warhammer, and then there's the fantasy Warhammer, and so they're not really.
They're not
related.
the same groups and the same.
No. As far as I know. So as far as I know, it's
just when
it's
I think
different.
I'm getting a handle on
exactly.
This.
Well, that's another thing, is that we gotta try to keep these straight. And so if we're learning about once we get like a little bit more of a handle on 40k, then we can get in the fantasy side, and then we can like see the difference and separate them more better.
Okay.
So that's another reason. But anyways, thanks so much for checking out our our 4-part series. This is part 2 of Bricky's part 2, and just keep in mind that our reaction for Bricky's Warhammer Every 40k Faction part 2
is definitely not definitive.